Supreme Court come out and said unequivocally, and it's never been overturned, that the Bill of Rights was not for the people nor the states. They were for those 207 inhabitants of Washington, D.C., and the garbage that are controlling it down there now.
All right, so, and that's where we once spoke about, when they refer to the United States of America, they're referring to whom?
The corporation of the Crown called the United States. It's a subdivision of the British Crown.
And so those are also the ones you're talking about who are covered by the Bill of Rights?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. And because in here, in this book, under the War Powers of the Executive of the United States, under Powers of Police Control, on page 191, it says, in March 1863, Congress expressly authorized the President to suspend the writ of habeas corpus and legalize his past acts. But for 2 years, Lincoln had suspended the writ of his own accord and had made arrests without warrant, holding the suspects as long as he pleased, not only without express authority and contrary to the prevailing opinion of his power up to the time of the Civil War, but in direct opposition to the authoritative ruling of Chief Justice Taney. So they say they can do whatever they want. Bush can do whatever he wants. Congress has nothing to say about it.
Well, in courts, lower courts, it does seem like habeas corpus, it does apply. I mean,
right.
Because obviously there is a charge laid and such.
Yeah, because, see, what it says, if you read the Constitution, it says that privilege and immunities, right? Everybody that joins has privileges and immunities. They have no rights. And if you read the section on habeas corpus, it says the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus. Now, there's the word. It doesn't say the right of the writ of habeas corpus. It says the privilege. Therefore, it was given to the people through the Constitution as a privilege and never was a right.
Can a privilege be revoked?
Sure.
Unlike a right, so to speak?
That's right.
Okay.
That's why they suspended the writ. They did it in 1863, and they did it all throughout the other parts. And in fact, the reason why the War Powers is there, just think about this. When Johnson took over after Lincoln was killed, he was ready to eliminate the War Powers Act and put the country back into a peacetime organization.
Hence his defilement and threatened impeachment.
Yeah, now here's what happened. In the Reconstruction Act, Congress realized all the power that they could have if they allowed the war powers to stand against even the president. And that is actually, the Congress is using the war powers when they're dictating to the states and everybody else in the country. In other words, it's conquest, pure, simple conquest. And Montgomery had it on his website, on ATG Press also, when people read that, and you can see very clearly, and he's got that documented to the nth degree, that the Congress is controlling everything, and that all the way up to 1959, the rent controls put in by the World War II Act still existed, and when they were taken to court in North Carolina, we found out in the archive building, they said that those rent controls could not be eliminated because they still are operating under the War Powers Act.
That's rich. Holy mackerel.
And you can actually go on there and read that whole taped conversation on ATG Press under the Informer, under mythology and a bunch of BS and all that.
Okay.
You know, in other words, when they went down to look at all the patriot mythology that's going around and all the BS that's being lathered about and people don't realize it, we wanted to find out, what are we dealing with here? And we found out what we were dealing with. You know, it was simple conquest under war powers, and where the people were made the enemy of the United States. And of course, if anybody wants to pull it out, they can go and look at the 37th Congress, Session 1 of 1861, Chapter LX. It's called an act to confiscate property for the insurrectionary purposes. And it's exactly what Whiting used in his War Powers book to give the authority and tell the authority to the president that, hey, look, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. And that's when they did it. And what it amounted to, it says, in Section 2, it says, and be further enacted that such prizes and capture, now that's Admiralty, shall be condemned district or circuit court of the United States, having jurisdiction in the amount or in Admiralty, any district in which the same may be seized, or into which they may be first taken and first instituted. It's all Admiralty terms. Now, when you come back down to the bottom, it says, and you got to think about this. Here's what it says. The words, quote, that the laws of the United States are opposed and the execution thereof obstructed, end quote, are self-evident that if you oppose the IRC, then you come under the War Powers statute as an enemy having no rights because you are in resistance to the laws of the United States. Okay. And that's what it is. So therefore, anybody that comes in under the War Powers and goes against any of the laws of the states and the United States, because we're all one happy family now, such as driver's license, property taxes, internal revenue, and all this, you are in opposition and resistance to the laws of the United States, and therefore you are the enemy of the United States in an insurrectionary capacity.
Which has been with us for?
Since 1861. Yeah. In fact, it was since that one I said you, which was the 37th Congress, Session 1, CA 6061, 1861, Chapter LX.
Two quick hits on what you've mentioned, and then I'll get back really, to the thread of war powers. But I didn't want to let this go by since I got you, and that is one. We can look at Hamilton pretty much as being treasonous, can't we?
Oh yeah. He was treason when he first came in. I mean, that was his purpose.
And it's amazing, although I guess, well, maybe not so, that we would have him on a $10 bill and Franklin, whom I don't think was a sterling character either,
right,
on the 50, both non-presidents.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. All right. Secondly, and this is probably showing to itself, but if you can tell me off the top of your head, McKinley's assassination, was that based on finances? Was this a bimetal problem and such?
Yes. I didn't go too deep into it because I saw what was going on, and I had gotten in, over where you first start. When you first start something and then you keep going and going. Well, I just jumped that about 5 times and found out what I wanted, and I just, why read the rest of it? I know what the story was. It's like when you read a court case, always go to the end, read the decision, and then go back and read the case, and now the case becomes so much clearer that you don't waste your time second-guessing of what they're trying to do and what they're saying.
Well, I didn't understand what he might have done to run afoul of whatever parties, and we had Garfield assassinated not that long before.
Right.
And there's another whole mindset about that as well. We're certainly not looking at lone gunman nuts, although I think that's what they want us to believe, is it not?
Yeah, right.
Well, one of them was a lawyer, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Most
all of them are. Yeah, most all of them are lawyers because every governor except one in North Carolina was a lawyer. And the reason why they want lawyers in here is because of the Bar Association, the middle temples of the Crown. The Crown is not the king, but the Crown is the banking cartel that owned everything, that owned the Bank of England and everything else like that. In other words, they set up their attorneys, and if you read the book by Charles Warren on the history of the American bar, and in there you can see how when lawyers were so despised that Virginia made it a hanging offense for anybody to practice law because the lawyers totally decimated Virginia. And then after that, they got into good graces right before the Revolutionary War, and that's when Warren gave you the whole history of all the bar from before the war all the way up to 1920.
But I mean, I'm right in saying we once spoke about when they refer to the United States of America, they're referring to whom?
The corporation of the Crown called the United States. It's a subdivision of the British Crown.
And so those are also the ones you're talking about who are covered by the Bill of Rights?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. But for 2 years, Lincoln had suspended the writ of his own accord and had made arrests without warrant, holding the suspects as long as he pleased, not only without express authority and contrary to the prevailing opinion of his power up to the time of the Civil War, but in direct opposition to the authoritative Supreme Court come out and said unequivocally, and it's never been overturned, that the Bill of Rights was not for the people nor the states. They were for those 207 inhabitants of Washington, D.C., and the garbage that are controlling it down there now.
All right, so, and that's where...
And because in here, in this book, under the War Powers of the Executive of the United States, under Powers of Police Control, on page 191, it says, in March 1863, Congress expressly authorized the President to suspend the writ of habeas corpus and legalize his past acts, ruling of Chief Justice Taney. So they say they can do whatever they want. Bush can do whatever he wants. Congress has nothing to say about it.
Well, in courts, lower courts, it does seem like habeas corpus, it does apply. I mean, when you,
right.
Because obviously there is a charge laid